And in some ways, the details of least seeming significance are sometimes the best gateway. So there's a principle in phenomenological practice called horizontalization. So horizontalization means that we make all phenomena equally significant. So, your pink jumper is just as important as the way that your mother treated you when you were 5. Now, it seems like a irrelevant or superficial detail, but it's one of the keys in phenomenological practice, because we tend to make certain things more important according to our idea. What we want to do in phenomenological orientation is get out of our ideas about what's more important or what's less important, and just pay attention. And so that's why Fritz Perls said Gestalt is a philosophy of the obvious, because we pay attention to what's obvious and we start from there rather than trying to find what's really going on with you. Where does this all come from? So this is related to a Gestalt orientation to awareness, because in being interested in awareness, we're not, you could say, interested in or utilize the idea of the unconscious. See, the words the unconscious is a reification. We're talking as if there's an iceberg with a big bottom. Reification. Reify. Reify. Reification. Reification is when you take a verb and you make it into a noun. So, and that's kind of, in a way, the essence of what we're doing in Gestalt. But I mean, NLP also talks about this quite extensively, the way that people nominalize. So they say, so depression is an example. Depression is a noun, right? So depression is a nominalization or a reification, because it's taking a process and it's making it into a thing. Then we can talk about depression as a thing. You're depressed as if you caught the flu. So this linguistic orientation to taking processes and making them into things transforms something into like a solid object, if you like, that's much more difficult to work with or change. So if you understand depression as a process, then it's a process which is happening right now. And therefore, it's a process which, in some way, you're participating in. You're, if you like, manifesting or creating the depression moment by moment. That's why I was saying if someone comes in with panic attacks, I'm going to say, can you have a panic attack right now, please? Because I want them to step into their agency in the way that they create a particular set of phenomena. I could say the same thing of a person with depression. I could say, right now, how would you increase your depression if you were going to intensify it? So we're always in an existential therapy emphasizing agency and process over this thingification, the reification.
Excuse me, can you repeat the last part?
About depression or about...
No, the reification.
Reification, yeah.
I mean, I understand everything, but I don't get whether reification is actually something good or not.
Well, to reify is to take something and elevate it into an identity or an object or a thing. So this happens frequently in people's language. I mean, you might say, and this is also related to Gestalt principles. So someone
It's like amplifying things.
Well, it's more than amplifying.
It's like
So let's say
materializing.
someone gossips. You know, some people like gossip. People like to gossip. Some people gossip a lot. And so then what we tend to do is we say, well, that person is a gossip. So we're taking what they do and we're making it into an identity, saying they are a gossip.
So this is the same like normalization.
Yes, that's right. Or reification. So
From abstract.
Like, for example, a wedding ring, it's the reification of wedding vows.
yeah, that's one way to describe it. So I'm using this example of being a gossip. So she's a gossip. So that's, yes, you know, she does gossip a lot, and she often gossips.
Identification somehow.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, a process and with different characteristic, and make it identity, and you can identify with depression. We can identify
yeah.
with whatever.
So I am depressed becomes the identity. So,
Oh,
you know, in Gestalt, we're always moving it back into verbs.
Yeah.
How are you depressing yourself right now? Or so the gossip is an interesting example of a Gestalt principle. I'm now being constrained by this because I want to go up to the board. I don't know what to do.
No, you can get it out and go to the board. So easy.
So this is the principle. If someone goes swimming 6 days a week, what we do is we say
Yes.
they always go swimming. So we continue, that's why it's called good continuation. We tend to continue something to make it into a Gestalt. They always go swimming, or they're a swimmer, that's a reification. It becomes an identity.
As I told you.
So if someone gossips a lot, then we say they're a gossip. Again, we're making it into a thing, into an identity, into a figure. It's a natural human phenomenon, and we want to, whenever someone uses a noun, we want to make it into a verb. In fact, Fritz Perls's definition of neurosis was someone who makes nouns, verbs into nouns. Too many nouns in the language. And you'll see this with clients. They use a lot of nouns in their language. It's like everything's stuck, nothing's possible because everything around them is a thing. My angry wife, you know, everything becomes reified. And therefore, there's not much I can do about my angry wife. She's just angry all the time. You know, so then we're going to unwind that back into processes. In fact, the identification thing is used in helping people stop smoking because people have an identity as a smoker. And so, you know, if you switch the identity to I'm a non-smoker, that's kind of helpful to switch the identity. But the transition from one identity to another, sometimes, yeah, it's not just as easy.
And
as
this will
changing
take us
before.
to yesterday's session. I have many reflections actually.
Yes.
I sit on this chair. Part of me is a client, part of me is a therapist,
Sure.
and part of me is someone who's experiencing whatever story I have.
Yes.
So one of the things that I've experienced yesterday, that the identity, I've lost my identity being a wife and a mother and having
Sure.
this system
Yes.
to a new one. So it's okay to, of course, this transformation will take some time
Yes.
to realize the new identity.
Yes.
Although we identify ourselves always with our state and our
Yes.
relationships. So this is a part. And the second awareness that I had yesterday as a client, that in this share, we are always, as therapists, we have this authority upon the client.
Sure.
Even though we are trying to make it
Yeah.
so equal, horizontal, but we still have the authority. And whatever we say, or we judge sometimes, or evaluate, it will impact, it's either positive or negative.
Sure, yeah.
And we tend to judge in our normal lives. We tend to judge, and here is the challenge also for the therapist not to impose or to judge or to say they tend to have, like you said, I realized that there is something. لا إنه أنا بشوف نفسي أكنه أنا في القصة.
associated.
As if we somehow
Resonating.
resonate. We need to differentiate between resonating and seeing the perspective of the client and feeling empathy. There is a lot, actually, I've learned a lot from this chair yesterday, and I really like to take it to a level to discuss it, but maybe it's not the right time for this.
Glad to hear it.
Let me, I want to continue answering the question online. She's talking about reflection.
Reflection.
Yeah, you just explained it. Can you differentiate between identification and reflection? Because
Reification, you mean?
reification, yeah, sorry.
Well, I mean, it's kind of similar, you know, identification with a particular, a noun, an identity, this is a thing, this is who I am, it's a whole package versus me as process or a phenomena as process.
Okay, when you discuss with the client, when you bring it here and now, what does it make to the client? What is the benefit he gets?
By taking something that's fixed and making it into something fluid.
So he can see it.
Well, you can see how it's creating it, or she's creating it, yeah. That's the emphasis on agency.
Yeah.
So the notion of existential responsibility is always the principle that we're constantly making choices. And so we're bringing awareness of that choice making to the therapeutic process, which is...
I have a question. You were talking about somebody who comes and, oh, my wife is angry all the time. And, there are people, how do you handle that? That's my question. People who think that everything, all the problems are outside. Yes. How do you change the way they see that maybe I have a hand in this, or maybe I'm in kind of
Sure. Well, firstly, I mean, I probably sympathise. Yes, it must be awful to be on the other end of your wife's anger. You know, I can understand that you're probably quite distressed. So when she gets angry, tell me, what do you experience? So straight away, I'm just taking it back into their experience. So we're moving away from all the structures and all the preset stories into their experience. And then even more, as you tell me about her getting angry yesterday that you forgot to buy something at the shop, what do you experience right now? So I'm leading the trail of experience right into the present, into themselves, and then there's much more fluidity and choicefulness available in this moment. So, you know, as they get in touch with the feeling of tension or fear, then that might flow into an experiment where I say, well, you hunch your shoulders. So let's imagine your wife is here. So firstly, let's just step into this process. She's just sitting there, but you know, let's imagine she's got the angry face on. So firstly, step into that process that you normally do of tensing and hunching your shoulders, and just feel that. Feel yourself doing that. Feel what you do on the other end of her. Right now, she's not saying anything, but go into your own process. So it's stepping into the person's process, but bringing awareness into that place. And lots of possibilities now. I mean, you might say, well, hunching your shoulders. I mean, you do that with your wife, but you know, was there any other time in your life that you remember feeling that? And then we might go to their field, we might go to the family. Yes, well, my father used to yell at me. So lots of places we can go from the position of experience. So it's all just like unpacking it, basically, with a focus on experience. You know, okay, so when your father yelled at you, you know, you also hunched your shoulders. Let's put him in the chair, and again, you know, feel yourself hunching your shoulders. So we're not trying to solve it. We're not trying to, you know, illuminate the client or give them new skills. But firstly, stepping into the experience itself, and out of that, then comes a flow.
So you mean like, if he does this several times, he comes to session several times, after a bit, on his own, naturally, he will start to have a new perspective.
Well, the perspective.
Without me doing anything.
Yeah,
He will
that's,
just-
yes, the perspective, because he starts to become more aware. But even more than just perspective, he has a new experience of self. Firstly, he becomes aware of the way he hunches his shoulders. So he's starting to take the focus off of the wife and bring it back to himself. Secondly, we might put a language to that. I'm tensing up right now. So we might, practice that in the session with the wife to say to her, as you yell at me, I'm tensing up. So even just that little piece of becoming aware and naming experience starts to become, some sense of kind of capacity to do something in that place rather than just freeze up. So it's more than just insight. I mean, sure, there's an kind of embodied insight that comes out of it, but it's more than that, because it's about him stepping into himself and his self-experience.
I'm sorry, but I don't understand what you mean by agency, like in your context.
Yeah.
You've used it a lot.
Right, because when things happen to us, the language that we all use sometimes, and certainly clients use, something happens to us or somebody does something to us, then in that sense, I'm on the other end of life, person, fate, whatever that is. And of course, we all are on the other end of things happening to us. The emphasis from an existential point of view, though, is given what's happening to me, what am I doing with that? That's the change of focus. Given that my wife yells at me, given that the boss fired me, whatever it is, what am I doing with that? How am I responding? And that awareness of self takes the focus away from environment and away from the sort of helplessness of being a victim and brings it back to me and my choices. So when any of us feel choices, we have a greater sense of agency. And
You have a sense?
of agency.
A sense of agency.
Being an agent. Cotter talks about it as self-efficacy.
You are a factor in this. You are a factor, embracing factor in this situation.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You have so
Your
much input.
responsibility, yeah.
That's right. That's an existential notion of responsibility.
Okay, I understand the idea of identification and agency, but I don't realize the relationship between them. For example, if I'm a depressed person,
Yes.
I need of depression my identity for it. So I'm now identifying as a depressed
Yes,
person.
that's right.
So that's reification.
Yes.
I reified the depression into
Yes.
me. But so this is what I'm trying to take off the client, for example, not to reify with the
Yes,
thing.
that's right.
But at the same time, the agency, it's like if I'm not reification with the thing, I'm having an agency over it.
Well, I'm having an agency in creating that.
Yeah.
My
Responsibility.
agency is how am I creating the depression. Now it's very tricky because of course if you say that to a client point blank, they just feel blamed. Or like,
What is your part
well,
in
you're
this?
responsible for your depression. So it has to be navigated very carefully, that awareness. Nevertheless, that is the direction that we're going in, is how am I responsible for.
I am a part of this situation.
That's right, yes.
And a part I choose to do that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So basically, how am I responsible for this reaction or for this action is a process that is called agency.
That's right, yeah. It's
Okay.
taking agency, being an agent.
Taking.
It's like another metaphor is the driver, as the
Yeah.
passenger or the driver. Am I in the passenger seat or am I in the driver's seat? If I'm in the driver's seat, I have agency because I can steer the car and
Yeah.
slow it down, speed it up.
That is the metaphor of act. You are the driver of
Yes,
your
exactly.
path.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is the difference between agency and responsibility? Because in existential, responsibility is used. Now you're using agency.
You're using them slightly interchangeably, yeah.
So
The same.
Yeah. I mean,
they're,
I'm not
they're
gonna-
exactly the same. There's nothing philosophy behind each word.
Well, yeah, there's double description, two ways of talking about something. Responsibility has a whole complex and interesting dimension in existential thought, but I don't want to go into that in depth right now because that's kind of interesting philosophy, but we're kind of getting a little bit away. So I don't want to just deal with the fine distinctions. Yeah. So,
If you are not going to deal with it, it means they can use any word.
yes, that's fine. That's fine distinction.
Can you please raise your scarf because it covers the mic?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
Thank
that's
you.
long enough.
I want to ask, how is this true with the manipulative relationships and the abusive relationships? If someone come and feel angry or manipulated, how much responsibility does he hold to himself to come out of this?
Well, from an existential point of view, 100% responsibility.
Yeah.
But the client is a long way from that. So from the existential understanding of 100% responsibility to where the client is, where they feel almost no responsibility, is a long road. So the question is, how do we support the person to take those steps? And sometimes they're very slow and frustrating. I just want to say to the client, well, you have some responsibility in there, but it doesn't work usually. So, it's a very
Like
slow
addiction.
process of awareness.
I think the most impressive example is the addict people. They feel that responsibility, what is outside, made them like that.
Yeah.
They have the choice because there is a lot of people in the same circumstances.
Yes,
They are
they
not
have the
addicts.
choices, yeah. But it's hard to use that.
One way to help the patient to come out of his identified self as a depressed person is a metaphor said by Ross Harris. Is if I have a magic wand and I spot on you and take off your depression, what you wish to do, what you wish to live, what you wish people will tell about you. So you will come into other area.
Yeah, that's right. It's suddenly, there's at least in the imagination, there's the possibility of some sort of sense of a different world, not completely stuck in this world. Yes, there's lots of ways to bridge that. So I want to say a few things about Gestalt, learning Gestalt. There's a few questions that come up about this. So I'm going to kind of use some metaphors first. I'm going to use quite a few metaphors, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more objectively.
No. Can you raise your voice, please?
Yes,
If you move this.
okay, sure.
Thank you.
So, Gestalt. Because this question has come up about learning Gestalt. So I'm going to say a few things. Number one, journey. It's a bit of a hackneyed metaphor, but I'm going to use it anyway. So,
what?
journey.
That's a bit of what?
Hackneyed metaphor. Hackneyed means overused.
Cliche?
Cliche, yeah. Nevertheless, I'm going to use it
You
because
say nothing cliche, Abhinay, it's okay.
because when people enroll in my Gestalt program, I tell them the factor of success in my many years of experience is not how smart you are, is not how much you know about psychotherapy, it's not how confident you are. It's about your commitment. And
Your what?
your commitment.
Commitment.
So part of how I see learning Gestalt is it's commitment to a process. In this case, it's a 6-day process. In the case of training, it's a 4-year process or more. So that quality commitment is a little bit akin to a relationship. You know, to make a relationship work requires commitment. That's like kind of one of the central ingredients. Of course, you have to have, you know, cohesion of values and chemistry, or, you know, there's other things that are important. But at core, the willingness to commit to the relationship is the journey that you go on with someone. And it's true in therapy too, you know, the commitment we have to our clients, and therefore the commitment that we ask from our clients is one of the ingredients. In my experience, serious therapy starts at about a year of therapy. Someone does therapy for a year, you know, it's starting to really embed. 2 years, fabulous. You know, we're really kind of getting into the heart of things. But that requires a lot of commitment. Money, time, commitment to really, you know, get something out of therapy. And, you know, I see the same thing with learning Gestalt. That it's a commitment to a process that isn't not necessarily just got a lot of short-term results, although, of course, you know, day by day, you want to be learning something new and something useful.
Vinay, excuse me, you mean the commitment, for example, in a one-to-one relationship with one client? So you mean like I have to spend like for a year practicing Gestalt with the same client to see?
Well, I'm talking about the therapeutic relationship itself. I'm just talking about that separate to Gestalt. Any kind of therapy, I think, requires some level of commitment. So I'm using the commitment to the journey as a key part of learning Gestalt. I'm just talking about learning Gestalt.
Not learning. How to learn Gestalt. It's a journey of learning.
How does Gestalt get learned?
Excuse me, and even the therapist should be committed and goes on with the therapy process with the client for a year or 2 or more. So that
Well, that's my
should be-
experience.
should be there. Should always not change as much as possible.
Well,
I
I'm
think
not
the
sure what that
concept is
means.
not very-
Commitment
I
is
mean, like, if I'm going to travel and I'm changing place, I'm not going to recommend my client to go to another therapist. I'm going to go on with them online. So I'll be committed.
That's what I would do, yes.
Excuse me,
Online or whatever, these are side details, but yes.
can we clarify more that we are talking about the learning course?
The learning of Gestalt,
Yeah,
that's
the
what I'm
learning.
talking right now. Just about learning how to
We
do
are talking
Gestalt.
about
which is
learning Gestalt.
part of
A
it.
therapist,
Yeah.
learning to be a Gestalt therapist.
Yeah, and learning, and also I'm caring about.
No, I just
No,
want to
no.
stay with learning Gestalt, that's what I'm
Talking about learning now.
I think it is a learning journey, and you require to enjoy the journey, not reaching the destination.
That's right, yes. Okay, that's part of what I'm pointing out. Now, I also want to use a couple of other metaphors. So we have Rumi, who I'm sure you're all familiar with, poet, mystical poet. He's got a lot of fabulous things he said. And of course, he's a poet, so he's talking about life, spirituality in metaphors. And so we have, on the one hand, poetry, and, you know, he says things like, your heart knows the way, run in that direction. I'll take this quote.
Your heart knows.
Heart knows. Knows.
Your heart knows the way, so run in this direction.
On the other hand, if you go to the other polarity, they have something like orthonology. Study of birds, right? So ornithologists, especially amateur ornithologists, are people who like to look at birds, bird watchers in vernacular terms. So you have at least in places like England, US, bird watching societies.
Ornithology,
Ornithology, yeah.
the nose.
Birds. No, birds.
The birds.
Study of
The
birds.
study of birds, okay.
So you have bird watching societies, and what they do is that they go out with their binoculars and they're looking for birds. And as soon as they see a bird, they write it down in their book. And then they're looking about the birds. And so the object is to spot as many birds as you can and write them down. And then it becomes like I've seen 20 birds today and here's their names. So it's all about spotting and naming.
Can I say something funny?
Sure.
I think it's ornithology.
Ornithology, yes.
Because this is,
Ornithology.
yeah,
Yes.
this is the science
Not
of nose.
ornithology.
Oh, sorry, that's mine.
Yeah. It's funny, I just think it's funny.
Ornithology, sorry. Ornithology.
It's such a weird job anyway.
Ornithology. Very good, yes. So, this is a very sort of objectifying process. Now, the reason I'm mentioning these two polarities in terms of learning Gestalt is because the way that many people want to go about learning, including psychotherapy, is this sort of phenomenological approach. They want to spot things. There's a technique. There's something I can do. There's something I can take and put into practice tomorrow with the client. Now, it's useful to be able to categorize and to recognize, and that's a whole lot of left brain activity. So thinking left brain, we put things in boxes and put things in models, and everybody does that. I love models, I love a good theory. Theory making in some sense. However, Gestalt tends to be learned more in this way than in this way. And if people are looking for this way of learning Gestalt, it's not really going to work. I'm just going to say that. It's just, that's not what I do, and that's not how Gestalt works. It works more in this, your heart.
And can we consider it more a psycho-spiritual thing, or is it just a psychological?
Well, spiritual is kind of a very complicated word, so I tend not to use that word. Yeah, I'd rather use this word imaginal or creative or integrative. So another...
Excuse me?
Mhm.
So I can say that Gestalt cares so much of spotting and sightseeing emotions and sensations.
Yes, or techniques, or therapeutic techniques. But
Okay.
less interested in the technique and more interested in the heart knows the way.
So,
Yeah, it's a softer version, yes.
To reach with the client to an exit.
Yes.
And I will refer again to my session yesterday. As we understand Gestalt, that I will sit with the client and take the most emotions that he has, and maybe I will be successful, or I will identify myself as a successful Gestalt therapist by letting him be deep, have deep emotions, or maybe cry, or maybe have this core going through the layers of the onion, the deepest layers of the onion.
Yes.
And bring it out and see something. Although maybe, however, the client may need just to have clarity, or just to have support in
Yes.
this session.
Yes.
Maybe after that, by building the relationship,
Yes.
we could reach something deeper.
Yes.
But
Yes.
we could not judge ourselves as therapists in the first session
Yes.
by just reaching a very, in our mind, it's a very shallow surface.
Sure, yes. In fact, one of my... Now, if nobody cries the whole weekend, I will still consider the workshop a success. And then my students used to call it cup of tea with grandma. And she'd sit there with a cup of tea, and she'd tell some stories. She's Irish. Good storyteller. She'd tell some stories. It seemed like very little was happening. There's this kind of weaving of relationship that went on, very subtle.
Had a cup of tea with grandma, it's not causing crying, just work.
What?
It's just work.
Just warm.
It doesn't bring pride.
Not necessarily, yeah. It was, she had a different approach. Another way that I like to talk about Gestalt is in terms of sex. Not sex with clients, but the metaphor of sex, because I think it's a very, very useful and helpful metaphor. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of Wilhelm Reich, who was one of the protégés of Freud, and he was the one that became interested particularly in the body. He's the kind of father of all the bodywork therapies, Alexander Lowen, bioenergetics, core energetics, it's all come out of the work of Reich. And Fritz Perls did therapy with Reich, so he was influenced by Reich's ideas and his therapeutic methodology. Reich was one of the first ones to turn the chair around, you know, instead of having someone lying on the couch and be invisible, who would work face to face with people. Reich was also very interested in characters and symptomatology. Okay, voice up. So Reich charted something he called the orgasmic cycle. That is the cycle of an orgasm. And Reichian therapy, at least traditionally, was about exploring this orgasmic cycle. So this is kind of similar in some ways to the Gestalt cycle of awareness, except we're talking about sexuality and orgasm. So this is a very simple representation of an orgasm. You know, you get excited, and then you have the orgasm, and then the energy subsides, very simplistically. But the thing is that's interesting is that everybody has their own unique, individual way of going through the cycle. Some people get excited and they have a little orgasm. It means that there's not a lot of energy, but they can easily achieve the orgasm. Some people, you know, they get excited, but they can't quite have the orgasm. They get stuck there. Lots of ways to chart someone's orgasmic cycle. And if you're doing sex therapy or if you're exploring this with someone, it's very interesting. In Reichian therapy, that's one of the focuses. So the reason I'm talking about this is because learning Gestalt is a little bit like learning to have an orgasm or learning to be a better lover, let's say. So, you know, if you want to be a better lover, then, of course, you can read some books, you can learn some techniques, and, you know, that's got value. But as we all know, having an orgasm is not something you try to do. It's something you have to it's a mixture between excitement and relaxation. You have to have enough excitement, but you also have to have enough relaxation. You can't try to have an orgasm. So it's a little bit like Gestalt because it's a combination of, we're working with the energy a lot in Gestalt. We're working with the cycle of energy, the cycle of awareness. So we're working with energy both in the client and in ourselves, and we're tracking that energy. And to do that, to practice it, requires being in touch with our own energy, knowing what happens and where we get blocked. So learning Gestalt is not just about tracking the client, spotting their symptoms or something. It's about understanding ourselves and understanding what we do with our own energy and our own awareness. So the focus in learning Gestalt always comes back to you, less about the theories or the techniques, and more about you, because in a dialogical therapy, the thing that you can, in some way, most give to the client is your knowledge of yourself. Not helping the client know themselves. It's what you know about yourself. The more you know about yourself, including your awareness of your energy and how that flows, your knowledge of yourself, that's what you can give to the client. The more work you do on yourself, the more you have to give. And when you can give that to the client, that's what helps their awareness, not just clever facilitation of their experiences, their emotions. So self-knowledge is one of the key ways in which you're going to learn Gestalt.
So we are talking about knowledge now.
Self-knowledge,
Okay.
yes.
How can I arrive to my self-knowledge?
So,
Steps.
right, this
Yeah, of course. How? I know it's a journey, but it starts.
okay,
Let us go back to the
steps,
metaphor.
Sure. What do you want?
So, what triggers me, my belief system,
Yes.
what emotions I have instantly, what
Yes.
things that happen around. So what is what things that triggers me now is an emotion or a thought comes in my mind, and to know this and to know that every now and then I will just put a priorities in all those things. So knowing myself will help the client know himself. Yes. By that's
Beautifully expressed. So there's
dialogue.
Sure.
Inner
own therapy plus self-reflection.
Yes, reflection. This is the most thing that's.
And also the process with the client, because it's through the interaction with the client that I also learn more about myself. Each client's an individual. Each client is therapeutic relationship is, as I'm saying, a relationship. So part of practicing and learning Gestalt is tracking myself, becoming aware of who I am in the therapeutic relationship. So that means I'm taking, again, the focus just off of the client, the spotlight on them, facilitating them, helping them, taking that spotlight off, and also bringing it back to myself in the therapeutic process. So I'm literally learning more about myself through the therapy as much as the client's learning about themselves.
Whatever inside to the client, is that what you mean?
Well, it's not just about not projecting, it's about the gift that I have to give as myself.
Can I give an example?
Sure.
My mind is very fast. So
Yes, I can see that.
Okay, again, I will refer to my experience. What do you mean by giving yourself in a session? From my experience, that when I'm saying something, you are also reflecting to yourself and seeing where is this in your emotions.
Exactly.
And maybe that will make first rapport between us, a very high rapport,
Sure.
and then this will make the flow goes more. That means that when you say your emotions, it's matching my emotions.
Yes.
I will bring it back to you, and this is
That's right.
comes the flow. And in an energy level,
Yes.
you will feel, or we will feel together.
Yes.
Where inside our body the
Yes.
sensations are
Yes.
moving,
Yes.
where are exactly things are moving
Yes.
inside our body.
Exactly. And
This is from
practicing Gestalt is like learning about being a better lover. Because being a better lover, it's not mainly about techniques, it's about tuning into the other person, knowing who they are, knowing who I am, being present with that. It's not something that you can really think about, it's something that you feel into.
Yeah.
Could you please map it again with the symbol of the orgasm?
Right, well, this cycle is about orgasms at the top and there's the build-up of energy and the release of energy, and there's the things that kind of get in the way or the shape. Sometimes the people might reach that very quickly, but then find it hard to let go of the energy. Everybody's got a different shape of their orgasm.
So you mean by building up self-knowledge, we get to know?
Well, this is the orgasm is not something
The
about
best-
knowledge, it's about embodied knowledge.
Embodied knowledge.
Yes.
Can I also give an example about this orgasm out of it? And then he comes to an end that he's shit.
Yes.
So matching the energy of the client by being with the client,
Yes.
not in my own mind, not in my own perspective, not judging. I am matching his energy.
Yes.
I'm mirroring and matching the energy
Yes.
to reach the peak points that we have been reaching since the
That's right.
days.
Yes.
Then, again, I know exactly from where the exit from his reaction
Yes.
to come to
Yes,
others.
that's
This
right.
is what I
Going through it
understand.
together. Nice
Do
tactics.
you agree with the people who say that the best therapists are the ones who've been through a lot in their lives?
Well, I don't think it's just been through a lot. I think it's We say digestion. So digestion is also related to, as I was saying, we use the word introject, equals swallowing. So because all of us have introjects, things that we swallow, beliefs, ideas, practices, etc., that are not always digested. We all have some of these undigested introjects, and then to the degree to which that's the case, then we're acting out of an extrinsic framework rather than our own truth. So the emphasis in Gestalt is always on digestion.
I didn't understand the part before that because I need to.
Sure. The emphasis is on digestion because otherwise you can end up taking in lots of, useful information.
And you just won't.
But yeah,
If we don't digest the information or the beliefs that are exposed to us.
then we're acting out of someone else's framework. So that's also true here. See, I don't want you to just interject what I'm saying. I want you to digest it, to assimilate it, so it becomes a part of you. And so that's also part of my reticence about delivering too many details, because then you kind of get lost in the beautiful theories or content, and where I want to keep bringing you back to, well, where does this fit for you? And I go here as a digestion process.
If I don't digest popping up on my body someday,
Well, I'm just going
will I
to...
suffer from it?
Well, I'm just using... It's just like, many people here are adherents of Islam, okay? Some might be Christians, or you've got your own belief system. So, but let's just use Islam for a moment. Okay, so Islam has many beautiful concepts and ideas and teachings about love, and teaching about responsibility, and teachings about all sorts of great concepts. So, there's nothing that can be criticized in there. It's all great stuff. It's all beautiful. But the issue is not the scripture or the instruction. The issue is, how do you live it? And if you just follow the rules, you can be a good Muslim, but it's not about following the rules. That's
Not
rude.
alive one. Not
Yeah,
alive one.
it's got to become alive, and it becomes alive by your digesting it, by your making it your own.
As if we are walking the talk.
Yes.
So you don't digest whatever you don't know.
Well, it's not just don't know. The knowledge, you don't digest when the knowledge is sort of
Okay.
abstract.
So let us go back to your two metaphors. The first, the metaphor of the orgasm. I can't go into orgasm if I didn't know how to start making love. If I don't know the steps to make love. I know it is something by nature, but sometimes some people need to be learned.
Yeah.
Okay? So what I am saying is basic knowledge is a demand to understand or digest anything. Sometimes when you eat, you choose certain types of food because that is what you digest.
Yes.
This I don't digest. Okay.
True.
But knowing what is basic helps me to get more.
Sure. Knowledge about nutrition, absolutely. It's good to know about nutrition, and
Yeah.
interesting to study
So-
about the different bird life.
Bring this to Gestalt.
Is it a good metaphor to say, I go to a therapist that was an ex-addict because he's gonna feel so much, he digested a lot of the...
Well, possibly yes, if they're an ex-addict who's digested it, sure. However, someone who's done a lot of their own digestion of their own experience is also probably going to be able to help, because they know about getting stuck. They know about chasing things which are kind of empty. They kind of know about some of the processes which go on. They know about the difficulties in connecting in relationships. They know about where they find it difficult in making connections.
It's theoretical versus practical.
Well, yeah, but see, it's about the integration of the theory. Yes, theory is important. We talk about it, but ultimately it's always about the integration. Otherwise, theory balloons out, especially in psychology. You know, we spend a lot of time learning these wonderful theories, and then it becomes as if we know something about human nature, which we kind of do on the cerebral left brain level, but the knowing is that I'm interested in is more this than this.